Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Have you ever wanted to write a book? Had a thought, maybe a theme, maybe it's in your line of work and you want to do maybe a nonfiction book connected to it. You got this. Actually, he's got you, taking you on that journey. And I'm referring to Mark Pogodzinski, who we've talked to a lot with some of the people he's worked with in terms of getting it done. NFB Publishing is his company. He's back with us. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. We have company knocking on the door, and that is Michael Hockwater, who wrote a book that you helped publish. Michael, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Steve?
Really good. Lots to talk about today. Your book, give us the title of your book. I want to make sure I got it right.
Sure. So it's Carter Knox and the Lost Legacy.
So when Mark was first telling me the title, Knox, I was thinking in like Hard Knock Life. And I was like, well, it must be a tough life for Carter. I didn't see the cover now. Now I got it. Now I fully understand it. And Carter is the main character in your book, right?
Yeah, and his life hasn't been easy, so you weren't too far off base with that. But Knox, the name for the character, I actually got. It's a pretty popular historical name in Buffalo, and there's a player on the Bills whose last name is Knox, so it's just kind of a popular, kind of name in Buffalo with a good history. And there's a lot of history in this book. So when I was deciding on names for characters, I kind of chose Carter, as a nod back to the Egyptologist and archaeologist Howard Carter, and then Knox just to honor some of that Buffalo history and heritage.
Well, first thing comes to mind, not being from Buffalo, is Fort Knox.
Yeah,
it's another one spelled the same way. So this book, even though it's fiction, it ties into history in, I'm going to say, is that your hometown area?
Yep, born and raised in Buffalo.
Wow. So the history is real within the book?
Yes.
That is unique. Mark, is there a name for that type of book where it contains factual stuff, but it is fiction?
It has still classified as a fictional book because the plot line is not real. But you can take historical facts and put those in fiction books. And I think that's a good way to get some readers and tie it to real events. And it's popular, a very popular type of writing. So I think it works incredibly well with this book too.
Take us through the book, Michael. We have a character. I believe the character is just approaching his teen years.
Exactly. So Carter Knox is a 12-year-old boy growing up in Buffalo who has archaeologists as parents. And his mother happened to be on an archaeological dig in Egypt where she disappeared and went missing. So Carter and his father, who also happens to be the curator in this universe of the Buffalo History Museum, are both kind of reeling with this loss in different ways, and both kind of become more withdrawn, and they both really feel alone. And while Carter and his father are dealing with this loss, Carter gets a package in the mail from his mother, which turns out to be a Egyptian Ankh amulet. And in the story, I kind of integrate some magical and supernatural elements and bring in some Greek and some Egyptian mythology there. So the Egyptian god Osiris, it turns out, was working with Carter's mother to fight against this ancient society of people known as the Knowledge Keepers. And the Knowledge Keepers' sole mission in life is to curate the timeline and erase history and stories and really try to dictate what stories get told. So throughout the story, Carter and his two friends, Lincoln and Charlotte, work with the god Osiris to go back in time and to find these magical artifacts that the keepers need in order to change history and accomplish their goals. The artifacts are the Book of Life, which is the magical book that everything that ever happened has been written and recorded in. And then the tool that they use to write the book is the Scrivener, which is this magical writing tool of sorts. So throughout the book, they go on an adventure through time, from Buffalo down to South America in search of the lost city of Z, which ends up being the location of the first tome or the first part of this Book of Life. And then along the way, Carter learns some more information about his parents and his mother, and learns some important life lessons along the way too.
The common theme here is archaeology. Is that a passion for you?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in history and in learning. I've been an English teacher and a literacy specialist for nearly 10 years in the Buffalo area. I actually began my career teaching social studies and history to middle school kids. So I've always been interested in history and archaeology, so it has been a passion of mine.
Wow. First time you've ever written a book?
Sure is.
Take us through that journey. Where did the spark first come? What were you thinking? Like, yeah, I'm going to do a book. And then that journey where, like, 12-year-old character, parents are archaeologists, and how that all came about. Because I believe a lot of us wonder, man, I got ideas. I think I could do this. You did it. So walk us through.
Yeah. So I've kind of always been, an avid reader and writer from as soon as I learned how to read and write. But I really started to get more serious about it during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's when, we were all stuck home and kind of isolated. So I kind of told myself, you know what, there's no more excuses. I have nothing but time on my hands. So I really should try to, accomplish this goal of mine and try to tell this story. So I buckled down, I got more serious about writing, and I wrote about 5 or 6 chapters of a very early draft of this book. It was different. It was more geared towards a young adult, teenager audience, and it took place in Central and South America instead of Buffalo. And then I kind of put it aside. The world opened up again and things started getting crazy. So I had these ideas in the back of my head, but I just didn't have the time, or I wasn't motivated at the time to revisit it. So flashback about a year ago, again, I decided, you know what, I've been putting this off long enough. I really want to get the story out there. And I kind of had, like this burst of creativity where I sat down one day. I was actually on a train back from a conference in Albany where I got these different ideas about different things that could happen in the story and different ideas about who Carter was and what had happened to him and what he was going through. And then I remembered these kind of bits and pieces of Buffalo history that I had learned in school or that I had learned on different tours and visiting different places in the city. And then, after a little bit more research, I kind of found a way to kind of naturally tie all these different things together. Of course, some of the facts, dates, and places and things had to be bended a little bit to fit the plot, but a lot of it, in some extent, in some form, to some degree, did happen here in Buffalo. And I kind of just thought about, there's 2 stories that I'm trying to tell here. One is the story of our protagonist, and the other story is that of the city of Buffalo and how they both kind of interact with each other. So it took about a year to write. I got into a routine of writing every day. Some days are more productive than others. I'm the type of person that, for whatever reason, tends to focus more or better when I'm listening to music or if something going on in the background. So I did a lot of that. I did a lot of revising and editing. That's part of the writing process. And I just never gave up. There were definitely times, where things weren't coming together, or I wasn't happy with how things were coming together, or some of the feedback I had gotten, wasn't quite what I had hoped it was. Then I went back and I changed some things here and there until it got to a point where I was happy with it, and I felt like I told the story that I set out to.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because that's the journey, especially from somebody that has never done this before. I think we all wonder about, self-doubt. It sounds like that popped in your head from time to time. Like, all right, I'm in this, but is it really going to happen? Am I going to get to the finish line? What gave you motivation to keep going? Like you said, some days it flowed, it worked great. Other days, maybe not so much.
A lot of it goes back to just, my job being a teacher. And I would see, these students in my classroom that, some of them were definitely avid, passionate readers and others not so much. And I kind of kept going back to the idea that, one of the driving factors why I wrote this book and why I chose, middle grade and early young adult readers is because, it's so important for students, especially in this day and age, when it's so easy to get entertainment from, TikTok and YouTube and social media and all these other places.
Yep.
I think that it's really important for people and for young kids to get immersed in a story. whether it's, an oral story or a book story, just to really preserve that importance and the magic of storytelling. And I knew that there were some kids in my class that were just reluctant readers that, couldn't quite find the right book that interested them. A lot of them, just coincidentally happened to be, middle school boys who had read, all the middle school sports books out there and then kind of hit a roadblock and didn't know what to read next. So I kind of wrote this book for them and for my students. And I knew that, kind of keeping them in the forefront of my mind and making that the purpose definitely motivated me and made me realize that, I'm not just doing this because I want to write a book. I'm doing this because, I hope that someday this book, can reach, real readers and real, kids like my students that would benefit from it and then potentially become lifelong readers.
I find it interesting that this book is coming from a teacher. So it's a whole different mindset. Like you're thinking, I have to imagine somewhere during the process, you're thinking like a teacher and what one of your students might be interested in reading and what can I do to keep them hooked into the book. Do you think that maybe that was floating around in the background of your mind as you're going along?
Oh, absolutely. For better or for worse, because sometimes then I overthought, certain things or overanalyzed certain things. But I definitely knew that I wanted to make a story that was engaging, that was interesting, that could hook readers in, and that they could connect to, emotionally, mentally, and something that they could also learn something from too, whether it's some of those life lessons about friendship, about loss, about overcoming obstacles, about the importance of storytelling, and whose stories do and don't get told, and kind of who makes those decisions. But also from more of a teachery standpoint, I was specific about the kinds of words and vocabulary that I included in this book. I thought about what are some words that maybe I can throw in here that kids might not come across that much that would really kind of benefit them to have in their repertoire to pull from when they read and write and speak. And I definitely included a lot of figurative language in here. I know being an English teacher, that's a big part of the New York State ELA standards and literacy standards. So that was definitely on my mind a lot when I was writing the book.
Appreciate that. We're going to take a short break and coming right back. I want to go into the whole process after this.
This is a car. No matter how much you kiss your lucky frog, wish on a star, do that thing you gotta do to get it to start, your car will eventually break down. And those repairs could cost you thousands, but not if you have Car Shield, like I do.
Car Shield is America's #1 auto protection company. Their administrators have paid out over $1 billion in claims and cover most vehicles from 5,000 to 150,000 miles.
I trust Car Shield administrators to pay your claims just like they paid mine.
I know cars break down. I don't want to pay for expensive repairs. That's why I have Car Shield.
Let's keep it real. No one wants to get stuck with unexpected car repairs. Have you looked at how expensive those can be? From the stress of the breakdown, getting towed, and then you're hit with the bill? It's basically a nightmare scenario, and nobody wants that.
With coverage through Car Shield's administrators, you'll receive 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental reimbursement at no additional charge. Plus, with Car Shield's nationwide coverage network, you can choose the mechanic or dealership of your choice no matter where you are.
I've been a Car Shield customer for close to 7 years, had 3 vehicles covered, and they saved me close to $9,000.
The best thing about Car Shield is just about everyone can afford coverage with no long-term commitment. So there's no more excuses why you haven't picked up the phone and called. At the end of the day, when it comes to your car breaking down, Car Shield has got your back like nobody else I know.
If you're driving without a warranty, you have to call Car Shield.
Yeah, you do. I drive with Car Shield because they're the real deal. Do yourself a favor and give them a call today. Tell them I sent you. And remember, Car Shield cars go farther.
Protect yourself now against expensive auto repair bills. Call Car Shield for a free and instant protection plan quote. Once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-908-6126. 800-908-6126. 800-908-6126.
All right, we are back and we're digging into the process to write a book with author Michael Hockwater and publisher Mark Pogodzinski. And, identified some things here about the book being part of the history of a city but also it's a fictional book. So with that, Mark, I want to ask you, in terms of facts checking, if it's a nonfiction book, did you have to go into detail in terms of what the facts were?
Not so much like a nonfiction book. That one has to be vetted. So that's a whole different process. With this one, because it is fiction, the rigors of checking for historical accuracy are a lot less. So especially with this particular book, because it is fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, we're not checking for minutia. Where nonfiction, that's the purpose of a nonfiction book, is to provide information about a topic. This one's entertainment. So there's two different levels of rigor when we check for facts and accuracy. So with the fiction, it's a lot less. And again, the book's supposed to be fun. As Michael said, kids are supposed to read, are supposed to enjoy it. If someone comes back and like, oh, you missed a date, it's a fiction book. Okay, that's allowable.
Mike, did you find yourself as a teacher almost saying, I got to make this perfect? I'm a teacher. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you've set a certain standard. Was that going through your mind too?
Oh, absolutely. I've always been a perfectionist even before I was a teacher. And, when I was in college, I had this professor that kind of changed my thinking a little bit about that. We were all traveling in Spain together because I spent some time teaching abroad in Spain for a summer. And we were walking through the city of Oviedo in northern Spain. And she was wearing this scarf, and, one end of the scarf was real up high. The other half was down, almost dragging on the floor. And someone that I was with kind of asked her, you got to fix your scarf. Why do you wear it like that? And she had said, well, she wears it like that because it reminds her that there's no such thing as perfect. And, by kind of dressing in that little bit of an odd way, it kind of was just a reminder to her to let the small stuff go, to live in the moment, and to enjoy things. And all these years later, that lesson kind of resonated with me, a little bit. And I realized that there is no such thing as perfect. Things can be pretty darn good. And if you work hard at it, you read closely, you edit and you revise, you can make things pretty good. But there's always going to be at least something that you miss or the editor misses. And right before I, sent this book off to Mark for publication, I was reading another book that was published. It happened to be by Victoria or V.E. Schwab. And I was reading through the book and I saw a typo. And then I was reading the acknowledgments section and I saw another typo. And I'm thinking, this is a very well-known, prolific author. And if there's mistakes in that book and it went through all those rounds of editing and double and triple checking before publication, then there's definitely going to be some in my book. And that's okay. And, again, as a teacher, I kind of think, well, that's just another trick or a little test for my students to see if they can catch them and recognize them and then try not to do the same in their writing.
I want to say I completely relate to the perfectionism thing. I rode that train for a long time. As a kid, I wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist. I came that close, pivoted off to broadcasting much far back in another galaxy. But I know what you're saying. And then also, when it comes down to living in the moment, I met somebody about 5 years ago that said that to me. She said, why don't you ever live in the moment? You live in the past, you live in the future. Why not in the moment? I had no idea what she was talking about. I believe she showed up for a reason. Took me a few months to figure it out. But then I got it. It's like, all right, the moment is great. Yes, you can sit there and worry about, is this book going to be right? Is it going to, is it going to inspire? Is it going to do everything I want it to? Can't worry about that. You can just do your best, put your best energy into it. What happens, happens, but a lesson to be learned there. Thinking about another book?
I am. So I'm actually transitioning out of the K through 12 classroom and moving into higher ed this school year. So I'll be a literacy professor at SUNY Cortland. And right now at the moment, I kind of have my hands full, getting ready for this new adventure. But when I first wrote my novel, in the back of my mind, I knew that this was a story that could be, spread out, over a series or a trilogy or something like that. And in my mind, I haven't written it yet, but I know, the twists and turns of this adventure and where I want the characters to end up. So at some point, I definitely do see myself, writing a sequel, and hopefully writing more books in general too. I have another idea that I've been sitting on for a little while now for an adult literary fiction story that I'd like to write. So we'll see. Hopefully someday we'll get a part 2.
Well, you said K through 12. What grades did you teach?
So I taught all of them at one point in my career. I've spent most of my time in middle school, though, particularly 6th grade.
The reason I asked that was my 5th and 6th grade teacher were the ones that encouraged creativity. And that was like kind of the beginning. So it's amazing when you think about what your teachers or what you're inspiring others to do, students to do, even just by writing a book. Like, it's got to be cool. Mr. Hockwater wrote a book. Imagine if it. Can you feature that book in class? Is that permissible? I don't know if that there's any kind of guidelines in the school for that.
I'll definitely have copies available in the library and different classrooms for kids to choose from for their independent reading, and then they'll continue on with their regularly scheduled curriculum they have in class. But just like you said, anybody can write a book, and that's something I definitely wanted to drive home. That point to my students, knowing that this could be you someday. Anyone can be a writer, and everybody has important stories to tell. You might not realize it. Maybe your story hasn't been told yet, but someday it will. And when you get to a point where you feel like you can share it with others or take parts of it and share it with others, then by all means you should. And getting a book published, this was a learning experience for me as well. It's not as mysterious and impossible as you might think it is. Mark did a great job of really, walking me through step by step and explaining the whole process to me. And, I think it's great what he and NFB Publishing are doing, and that they're allowing more stories to get told, stories that may not get published by, let's say, Harper or Penguin or one of those big publishing houses, but are still equally as great stories that deserve to have a readership and an audience.
My last name is really Harper. I'm not connected to that company at all. I'll just say that. I wish I was. Otherwise, I'd be publishing your book.
Yeah.
We all have a story to tell. Thank you for telling yours. Even the scarf story. This goes to show the vivid mind you have, because I remember that, and I will remember that, just the off balance on the scarf. Mark, best way, if somebody pondering writing a book, just reach out to you. How do they do that?
We visit our website, nfbpublishing.com. There's a simple form to fill out, which starts the process.
Awesome. Thank you both for today. Really, I learned a lot. Inspirational too, Michael, for anybody that's even thinking that, I wonder if I could do this. Yes, you can do it. We all got something inside. We all have a story to tell, whether we made it up or not. Appreciate both for being here today. Really do.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. Childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.